who's coming to check out this lecture class later. Okay. Yesterday I gave you some introduction idea of software construction. What should be good? What should be good component? What a good practice for developing for construction, for development and construct the software. Just like in high level of component design, and then some suggestion for a kind of good component and the detail related to the software construction. And today, to be more specific, when we construct the software or when we develop the software, it means we're developing the code. And then what we are going to discuss today is the code convention. What is a code convention? It's a guideline, the suggestion on how you should, what should be the basic practice of do coding, and why do I have to suggest this? Because many years ago, I have to say many years ago, and even nowadays, the people in the development, as a developer community, they have some suggestion, they have some conclusion that to develop the code, to develop the software, it's not just writing the code on the manner of whatever you want to give it, whatever you want to do, and even if it can run is good code, that is not. Spaghetti code. What that? So before we go into the code convention, have you ever heard of the word spaghetti code and the word clean code? Have you ever heard about this kind of word before? Yes. Well, yeah. If you have any idea what is the difference between clean code and spaghetti code? I think that is an idea of very clear. The thing is, spaghetti code incoherent code. Just like yes, but in my well, what I want to introduce to you is that the spaghetti code is a code that is not managed. It's not well managed, and it is connect to everywhere and just curry or many things just miss, just like very confused code, and this kind of code will be difficult to understand, and also it will be, and if it is difficult to understand, also the other thing is that it's also difficult to it's also difficult to change. It's just like I found that kind of code many times, many years ago. Uh, the thing is that the program is working for 2 years, and then it stopped working without any reason. Some of my friends asked me to check the source code and fix it. They gave me a source code, and then it took me a week to understand what is inside that code. Why it took so long? Because everything they put everything together, and a lot of one will they use some in the program. They have some just like 20 or 40 function which is connected to the graphic user interface, and then for each function is contained to over several hundred line of code, and and some part of the code is just redundant. They just put some of the what I want to say is that they just put some part of the code which is working, the same part of the code that connects to some kind of database or something into every function, and then they didn't separate into that from that code into one function to manage it. They just put everything and make one function work for one GUI for related graphic user interface, and then yes, that will be about 2,000 or 3,000 line of code I have to check, and there's a lot of redundant code that which is they didn't the previous developer, they didn't care what is it. They just care that it's work and it's fine, and then the problem will the problem will sorry the responsibility of changing this will be the task of the next developer, and that is not a good practice for every software. So um and that kind of spaghetti is took with a very long time and very uh high it just waste, and actually simply said it's waste of time to change that. It's waste of time to find out where the error is, and it's waste of time to I don't know. I spent a week for that, and just to change I I have to design the new sub function, new object to replace all that code and make it work again. But the point is you need to understand that the working software sometimes is not equal to the good software, and the working code sometimes is not equal to the good code. Also, this book, The Clean Code, is some guideline, and I recommend that if you have a time, just find this book and read it and to understand what the book trying to say with you. And this is a point of experienced developer. There is not just a academic things, and it's like it's like when people work for over 10 or many years and they experience a lot of things happen related to the code, to the programming, to the system, and they realize that they should provide some information for the other people. So when the people develop the code, this will be the better way of coding, and so they like this book and give it a name, Clean Code. Whenever you listen to this kind of things, Clean Code, that is feel better than spaghetti or anything, any kind of the other word, the other jargon. And for me myself, it's okay. It's better. The Clean Code is simple, easy, effective, and and then what? Easier to understand. So to to go further, You can check out this book, but actually this book is not related to any sort of us, but we are trying to point to the same thing. Coding is not fully art. You can do that kind of thing if you're working alone, but when you're working with many people working together, you need to understand some standard, some good practice, so you can integrate your work with the other effectively. So for the coding convention today, we are going to talk about two main topics, which is method design and the code convention. So let's start. When we design a method, we need to just make the design. We should design by make the method generalized. You can start by the idea of using a class as an abstract data type, which represent collection of data type and collection of operation. What does this mean? It means collection of attributes or property. That is the thing that you study on your first year object-oriented programming classes. And collection of operation. What does this mean? With collection of method or collection of function. That is inside the class. So the benefit of doing some design the class as an abstract data type, we have some benefit which are the high implementation detail. And if you design well, the change don't affect the whole program and make interface more informative. Improve performance is easier to improve for performance, and the well design class is like it becomes more self-documented. Just like the class that when you read the class, you can find out what is the class name, and then what is the attribute inside, and then what is the responsibility of functional that can be called from outside or can be called by itself. And if this is well written, it will it will be easier to understand and faster to understand, and work with the real world entity rather than the low level implementation. Just like uh, can you see the code? Okay, I wish you can see this code. For the class, now it is better. Should I go and enlarge it more? I think it will be too big. Okay, how about this? Okay. What does this mean? Let's see. If I name this class a class of TAC power, we have the one public property of the voltage, and this is type of integer. Okay, and this is the constructor. So what does this mean? This class represents itself as some kind of abstract data type for the AC power, which is contain the property of the voltage. and any from anywhere can access this one. Right. We can access it and we can, and that's for this card is easy to understand, right? And it's quite well documented, and blah blah blah. That is the example of the code that should explain itself. Okay, and then that this I just swap to the code just to show that the good design card is it can be the self-documented and easier to understand when you see the code. But if I create some, okay, I will demonstrate this in detail. And every class we have a class interface. What does it mean, class interface? It means that comparing this one on the left-hand side and on the right-hand side, which one is better? From regarding to this slide, on the right-hand side is better. Why? Because we provide the proper connection point for this class, and we just hide some unrelated tasks for the outside in the private. Comparing this with this, do we need to expose or let the outside use the initialize global data method, shut down global data method inside this class? Maybe or maybe not. But if not, we should not show. We should move this method into the private part of the class. So the outside must be able to get the usable and related method that we want to show. That is the way of, this is the idea of a class interface. The class interface is mean that we design how the outside can call and use the specific part of the code, but we should not export every part of the code to be able to use from the outside, because we need to control something, we need to hide some kind of logical thing, and that is the idea of encapsulation, and just provide the proper functionality that the outside or the color will be used. Okay, or in this conclusion is the class interface. It means it can be interpreted as the method that the class exports to the outside. We should in the design, we should just present a consistent level of abstraction in the class interface. Just we have level of this public method. We have add employee and remove employee because it's on the employee level. And then in the list level of the employee, we have the operation on get the next employee, get the first employee, get the last employee, or get the specific list of employee. Okay, this is for the user, for the who is going to call the API. This kind of export, this kind of method is be easier to understand. What can we do with, what can they do with this class or this interface or this type. And then, but if you just shuffling this one, it's okay. But when people see this kind of thing, when it's shuffle, it's mix it, and just the I don't know. For me myself, it's like, why don't you just make it in the proper arrangement for the interface of the class, and present the class interface should present consistent level of abstraction in the class interface. Comparing to this one, we should not export the list container of all the employee. We just let the outside be able to add, remove, get the first employee, get the next employee, and continue until get the last employee. And we should hide the list. Why? Maybe we can get some kind of specific, provide more method, just like get the employee from the list, but we should not expose all the list to the outside. If this is a list inside the class, it should be here. And it's a suggestion. So for the class interface, we should understand what the abstraction the class is implementing, just like the collection or the entities, provide service in pair with their opposite, just like add, delete, except one thing. You may have a question about update. It's okay because it's what can we do with the update? As if we have an opposite. Maybe or maybe not. It depends on the requirement. But normally we have add, delete. Something like this. So the operation in pairwise it can give you the proper idea of what the interface you should export to the outside and move unrelated information to another class, because we need more cohesion. The better the class that represent itself just represent its own functionality is better in design and in implementation, as I explained yesterday. But this is just the idea. It's a convention that you need to, when you design a class, you should follow this kind of idea. And then every class, you should point out when you implement the class, you need good encapsulation. What does it mean? It means that we should minimize the accessibility, make it easy to understand. And the class with only public routine is good? No. And be careful on semantic violation of encapsulation, and be careful the coupling that is too tight. Don't expose member data into the public. Don't make assumption that about the class user use. What does this mean? It means that you don't need to implement everything that you think user will use. Just implement what is related to this class. And then if you want to add more functionality to the object that you want to use related to this class, you can use inheritance if needed. And don't just put the routine into the public interface just because it's used. Because some routine, some function, it should be somewhere else, not to be in some place in the class. It should be in the other class. I said something like this. That is the idea of good encapsulation. And inheritance, what is it? It's represented by is a relationship. What does this mean? From design, sorry, should use this. Um, any office actually interface. Okay, just like this, the DC power 12, we extend DC power. What does this mean? It means that this DC power 12 voltage is the DC power type with different implementation. Okay, so from this code, from this card declaration, it means that this one, the extend card, also is a type of this object, right? How can we say that? Can check this. Oh, like this. The class DC power 12 voltage is a type of DC power. This is a relationship because when we look at the source code, it's extend from this one extend from this. So this one we heard that represent is a relationship. And then from this previous slide, don't put a routine into public interface. Sorry, don't make assumption about the class user. Use inheritance if needed. It means that if you have something that is if we implement the person class and it's not enough, we need some more functionality. So we can create a student, customer, or employee which extend from the person and add the student functionality or student property. We add customer functionality, customer attribute, an employee function and employee attribute into the class itself to represent the employee, which is a type of person, but they contain more implementation and more functional or more interface to use. And then that's it. And when we can provide a way of manage the person as a list, and the list of person can be, how can this contain? It can also be able to contain the list of student, the list of customer, the list of employee also. But when we use the inheritance, when we think we need to use the inheritance, we need to be careful on make sure that you follow the risk of substitution principle. Is the principle is you should not inherit from base class unless they deliver a truly either in more specific version of the base class. Just like if you have some class like this, for example, this I use public because I just it is not a good practice, but just for demonstration purpose. Uh, and okay, we provide something like that, and we have some some like this. If you have a class person, we have name and last name, and whenever the get age, it's called it's return something. And for the customer, for this example, do we need to extend something like this? Maybe or maybe not. You should consider this whenever you need to extend this. Thus, we need more functionality, which is not contained or may not be represented by this one. If we need it, we need to, okay, we can use interchange, but some people just use this one. Some people do something like this. It's just extended, and they didn't extend anything. They just want to use a customer class, and then they do something that some people normally design some code like this in the object-oriented programming concept, and I don't fully understand what are they doing. Just like they extend the class, but and all of this has the same method or same responsibility, and nothing different in the idea of implementation, not in some kind of detail. But if there's something like this, why we do inherit from this one? If the implementation is not changed, we should not do that, because we try to create some type, which is, I don't know, it cannot represent anything and any advantage of creating this thing. If all of this is able to represent the object, do not doing create student get a student over and over, and it's working the same functionality, that is not proper way of design or implement the code. Okay. Just like from this example, what should be proper for use and should not proper? Employee is a person. Is it okay? It depends. Wheel is a car. No, the wheel is not a car. The car has a wheel. All right. Hovercraft is a ship. Since hovercraft can land on the land and the sea, this is a ship. Yes, but there are some more functionality than a ship, and should be represented as some kind of the thing that moving on the land also. Maybe we can use ISA, or we can create the different type about the truck and car. Maybe or maybe not. It depends. If the truck is totally different from car in the requirement, in regarding to the requirement aspect, yes, we should implement different, or we should use the inherit. But that is the example of what should use as a good So it should not be such a good. It should what should be important and proper to extend. Okay. And then the next thing is try to base interface before class for the service or database connection class. And then we can substitute the implementation later. What is it you studied last semester? Right? Dependency injection and inversion of control. This is a way of the proper way of doing this. Just like you provide interface for person management, add person, delete person, update person, and lead person, get person. This is you can provide this interface first, and then you can implement this way of connection for calling service later. But after you define this service, you can the code is available for use inside your class, and you can calling by the other type of object. And just don't override the non-overridable member function. Don't some people always override something which is it should not, and because if you keep override the the member function for many classes and you use it, how can the other people know what are you doing? And then you should move common interface data and behavior as high as possible in the inheritance, and be suspicious of classes. If a class represents only one instance in the system, this is good. And you have only one class, only one derived class, the override routine and do nothing inside the deliver routine. That is not the proper way of choose inheritance. That is the way of to check it. And I don't know, the suggestion that when we need, if it is essential to use the inheritance, the number of inheritance depth in your system should not be over 7 plus or minus 2. And instead of use inheritance, you, I think, prefer polymorphism to extend type checking instead, and make all data in the inheritance chain is to be private, not protected, to make it self-contained in the class. Then we talk about the class interface or the way of design, how we interacting, and the inheritance property that we use. Then the constructor, what is the constructor? From the OOP class, its constructor is to initialize all member data in our constructor. We should initialize all the member data in the constructor if possible, and prefer deep copy over shadow copy until proven. So what is the difference between deep copy and shadow copies? Anyone know? Can you give example of this? Deep copies and shadow copies. Any idea of this? Hello. What is deep copies and shallow copies? The answer is okay. Is deep copy duplicate everything, creating independent object. Yes, including all nested element, and shallow copy duplicate an object top level structure, not the nested object which remain shared. Can you find the example? No. Okay. The thing is that you should be careful when you're developing the code, and this is example why of the deep copy and shallow copies. You see that I create AC1 and AC2. When I change AC1 voltage to 110, I print out AC2 voltage. It's also 110. When I change AC2 voltage to 220 and print out AC1 voltage, it's to 220. What that is 3%? 3% shadow copy. The AC2 and AC1 is get shadow copy. AC2 get shadow copy from AC1. So if you want to get the object which is copy from this and make it working separately, you should use some copy command instead of instantiate like this. Okay. And when you do some coding in Java, you need to make sure that this is you understand this concept, because if you do something like unexpected change, you don't change anything in AC1, but when AC2 is changed, AC1's voltage also change because this is shadow copy. Okay. Any question? No, thanks. Okay. That is the thing that we should be careful when we construct or initiate the object in any programming language. And each programming language will have different implementation of deep copy and shallow copy. You should be careful to check that when you use those programming language as the tools that on your development. And when you create a class, you need to think what is the reason to create a class. Okay, we have to recreate a class for model the real world objects, model the abstract objects. We try to reduce complexity by hiding the detailed information inside the class. We isolate complexity, hide implementation details, and limit effect of change. That is the reason. And then the next is to hide the global data to facilitate the reusable of the code, because we have the well-designed class can be reused. Just like that is a good idea. If you can reuse the class in the other system. And then we plan for a family of program. Just we can interact with the other program and to create a class to represent the kind of package related operation. That is some advice of reason you need to consider when you should create a class. But when we create a class in your system, this is suggestion of avoiding creating this kind of class. First, I will skip the first one. The second one is irrelevant classes. What does this mean? The class which is not related to any of the system functionality or object. And if not related, you don't need to create it, just put it somewhere else. And the class name after verb, we should not create a class which is database initialization, because a class normally, what is a suggestion for the name of the class? It should be now. Because verbs is mean operation, it's mean in action, and the verb should be in the part of interface name or method name instead. Okay. Why? It's a convention, because when you type here some class which is the name which is in the verb phrase or the verb, it represents something that's operating, and it is not comply with the standard naming convention for the class. Okay. Next one. The first one here. What is it? What is a God class? Have you ever heard of this? Okay, what is it? Can you can you explain? Yes, the class that do everything, just like in the program which has just only one class over in that. Oh, why is not good? Even they call it a God. Because they are not high. They have low cohesion. We have a lot of functionality which is not related, putting in one object. And then it may contain the high coupling of the object and of the parameter of the variable inside that class without any noticeable part of code or blah, blah, blah. Just like try to avoid the class that do everything. It's work, it can run, but it's not a good practice. It's not a good convention. If you have a class which is something behave like something like this class can do everything. Just separate it into proper functionality. Create a new class to represent that part of attribute and functionality instead of use it as one big class. Because I can say that with a word. And we will come back here again in the testing, in the software testing detail. I will show you why we should avoid the God classes. Not just for the idea, it's also affect everything, especially in the test. and you'll see very soon on maybe this week or next week when we start talking about this software testing. And for the routine and method design, routine is equal to individual method or procedure invocable for a single purpose. Just like there are many representation routine, procedure, function, or method. And what is the low quality routine? Just like we have the function. When we design the function, we should give it a good name. We should describe what it does. And this is a the way to identify the bad quality routine has a bad name. Just like doing this or like this. My question is, why do the generate report routine is not a proper name for use? Any idea? And because just it's confusing. Just if you carefully analyze what inside the requirement or inside the normal system, how many report one system need to generate? One? No, there's a lot of report things that uh then need to be generated from the system. So this one is like it's too ambiguous. It's not clear. It's unclear, and this has a bad name to present. And when we look at this, we have no idea of what happened after we call this method. And when you provide the method and without any document, bad layout, and change the input variable after the routine is finished, and read and write global variable, this is not a good quality method. We should avoid these kind of things in our system. And furthermore, it doesn't have single purpose and does not defend itself against bad data. Just like if you create some calculator application and you allow the user to input the zero as a divider, that is not a good method design. And we use some kind of several magic numbers, just like x divided by 2.4. The question is where the 2.4 come from, and if you need to change it, how can you change with any supporting reason? If not, try to make sure where this kind of number come from in your system, in your method. And the method contain unused parameter. Why? You should avoid. You should not initiate everything which is unused. Is waste of time, waste of memory, and waste of execution time. And the method should have the parameter input lower than 7. If it's larger than that, maybe you should change the way of inputting parameter. And parameter are poorly ordered and not well documented. It's like if I create something like this. Okay, this one. Uh, If you see this kind of method, okay, and can you guess what this method is going to do? If you input something like this, no, it doesn't represent anything. And how can you know if it's not well documented? You should sometime when you're doing a code. I don't know. That's right. You can use the comment. Something like this, so the people and make it a metadata so that people can understand what the method do. And just like if I need the IJK input when we export this, do you have any idea what it's going to do? No. So to create a method, sometimes in your code you need to give some comment, explain what is it, and the input parameter, it should be well naming, and also if there are many parameters as an input larger than 7, you should reconsider is it actually need that many argument input or not, or just we can change it for some other type of input which is better. But that's it. That is just a guideline or the idea. And what is the reason to create a function or the routine is that we need to create it for reduced complexity, to introduce an intermediate understandable abstraction, just like the well-named routine is the best way to document its purpose. And avoid and we create the routine or function because we want to reduce the number of duplicated code, the same function of the code existing everywhere. If you have something like that, then and we need to update that function. If we create it as a routine, we can update it once. But if we place the same code everywhere for 10 places, if we need to update it, we need to update it 10 places, which is yes, it's a task that should not be the task. If we provide proper functionality function to call and use. And create a routine for support subclassing and hide sequence of from the private routine. We just had to hide something inside the routine rather than export it to the outside. We can in the C programming language or C++, we can hide the pointer operation because inside the class. And improve portability and simplify complicated Boolean tests, use the test function, improve the performance for frequently used piece of code. If you have some part of the code that frequently used, more always used, and you want to accelerate it, it should be better to put that in the function and test and modify to get better performance. Because when you put it as inside a function or method, it's easier to test and to prove that we can make this part of code, make this functionality faster by implement blah 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 related to the technique that you prefer. And we have some homework here. I will assign. I will not assign today. I will assign after tomorrow class. For there will be 2 or 3 homework for tomorrow. Related to yesterday to make sure that our students watch the video and they have a time to complete the homework. What is a good routine name? It's just kind of everything the routine does, just like compute, report, total product sale per month. Compute or generate report on total sale and open output file. We should avoid meaningless where or wishy work just like this one. Handle output, perform service, format and print output or generate report. We should avoid this. We could do something like this instead. And don't give a name as a number. Just like output user one, output user one, output user two. Why? Because when I give it to you, which one you choose? 1, 2. How can you know which one is proper for use? You have any idea? For me, if I see some the method like this, output user one, output user two. I don't know. It's not proper well explain what I'm going to get after I execute this code, or what is the functionality of this code. Which one I should use? I cannot find out. Maybe I have to go to ask the developer what method I need to use. If we have some kind of number. For the idea of good routine name, you can use the name of routine as long as necessary. From 9 to 15 character is fine. And maybe some routine name is slightly longer, that's fine. Just to make sure that it's well explained. And use description of the return value, just like cost function or customer ID.next or printer check is ready. Use a strong verb followed by an object, just like document print or other info check or something like this. Naming, which can be used opposite word for precisely. The naming can be easier explain what the functionality of code and the routine name does. Use it. And how many lines of code should be in the routine? The appropriate size of the routine can be reduced reduce the cost of development and reduce the change and easier to understand. For many researchers, the length allowed 200 lines of code should be okay and should be considered as for 200 lines of code with the low cohesion as possible. Sorry, for 200 lines of code, if it's not related, some people we think about this as a low cohesion, but it depends on how complexity, how difficult your method needs to be implemented. But normally, the method should not has more than 200 lines of code. This standard regarding to the old C programming language with not without the helping of package or the library, but nowadays just like for the coding technology, the programming language today just about 50 or under 100 lines of code for high complexity method is okay, but if larger is if it's complicated than that, you should separate it. There's a way to separate it if you totally understand what are you going to implement it. And the parameter input of the method or the routine. You should put parameter in input modified output order for some programming language. Just like if you have the input that is just give it a proper sequence of input and output. And server routine use similar parameter, put the similar parameter in consistent order. Just like if you have 3 variable for that defined by 2 method and it is the same 3 variable, you should put the same sequence. Otherwise, if you switch the sequence, it's if you have to understand and it's be not proper for further use by the other people or by the other interface. And if you have input parameter, use all of it. Don't input everything and don't use it because I don't know, it's not a proper. It's waste of time of people if the people don't understand what kind of the main things that you want to use in this function. You input 5 parameter and just use 2, and then they will need to check what happened with the other 3 that left in the function. And then use the routine variable as a working variable inside. When you get input as a data, you don't use it as a working variable. You just instantiate the other object to retrieve the data and operate it, and then each one to return, you can return. And again, number of parameters should be about 7, no more than that. If not specific by some kind of support, some kind of requirement or anything, just try to make the routine less than 7. Just like this one, use parameter name to describe itself, just like distance 3D. We have x distance as a coordinate, y distance as a coordinate, and z distance as coordinate. For if you're reading this thing, you can understand what is parameter going to do, what should be inside the parameter input, and that is give the other people the chance, give the other people the way to understand what your code does. Comparing to this, A S like this, the upper or the top or the bottom, which one should be easier to understand? From the top, you can understand that, okay, this is one for the x-axis of the distance, and the second one is a y distance. But if you put A, B, and C, should A be x, or A be y, or A be C, or A be is C? No, we have no idea. So it's like the proper given name make the life easier. Okay. And then we just talk about, I think we're going to stop here and continue again tomorrow. Okay. Because next we are going to talk about variable. What should be the idea of creating the naming and convention, good convention practice for the variable. And for tomorrow, we finish the presentation on code convention, and I will and then offer and I will assign the homework and the project. Okay, thanks for joining the class. Have any question? Tomorrow class will be 1 p.m. until start at 1 p.m. Okay. I'll stop recording and stop the and